I didn't say a word when the HOA president leaned across the folding table, jabbing her finger at me and shouting about trespassing. All I did was slide a worn leather folder across the wood surface, open it, and let the original deed sit in plain view. The same deed that carried my grandfather's name, notarized and stamped in 1948, with the exact survey lines still visible in faded ink. Their lawyer caught it first, his lips twitching as he scanned the boundary descriptions. He went pale. He knew what I had just done, even if the board didn't yet. I had just stripped the HOA of the power they thought they had over me. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't threatening, I was just holding the one piece of paper that turned every fine, every threat, every smug letter into a pile of nothing. That was the moment they realized they hadn't backed a cornered homeowner. They had poked a lion holding the deed, but to understand how it got to that point, you need to know what my life was like before all this. Because none of this started with me looking for a fight. Far from it. I had inherited a small piece of land from my grandfather, a quiet 10-acre stretch that backed into woodland with a creek running through the edge of it. It wasn't anything flashy, not the kind of property people put on postcards, but it had character. My grandfather built a small cabin there after he came back from World War II. It was simple, rough timber, a tin roof that had been replaced more times than I could count, and a front porch with just enough sag to make the rocking chair feel earned. When I got it, the place was falling apart, but to me, it was perfect. I wanted to restore it, not to flip, not to sell, but to keep a piece of my family's story alive. That land was my escape. I'd work on fixing the roof, then go fish the creek. I'd clear brush, then sit by a fire at night with a book. My plan was to retire there someday, maybe sooner rather than later. I didn't want drama. I didn't want control. I just wanted peace. But apparently, peace doesn't sit well with an HOA that thinks it runs everything within sight of its borders. The first sign of trouble came taped to my cabin door. It was a bright orange violation notice with "Urgent" stamped across the top. According to the HOA, I was in violation for constructing unapproved structures. The so-called unapproved structure they were talking about? The cabin. The same cabin that had stood there since the 1940s, decades before the subdivision even existed. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone got the wrong lot. So I called the number on the notice. I still remember the way the woman on the other end said it, like she was speaking down to a child. "Sir, all property improvements must be approved by the board. You can't just build whatever you want." I tried to explain that I hadn't built anything new, that this was an inherited cabin on land that wasn't even listed under the subdivision's covenants. But she cut me off with a curt, "We'll be sending another notice." That was the spark. From then on, it was like they had me on some kind of list. Letters showed up weekly. They fined me for unauthorized gravel placement after I repaired the driveway. They claimed my fence was out of compliance even though it sat well within the original boundary markers. They even wrote me up for having an unauthorized vehicle when my brother parked his old Jeep by the cabin while helping me with repairs. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it wasn't so exhausting. At first, I tried to be reasonable. I wrote letters explaining that my land wasn't part of the HOA. I showed them copies of the county tax records listing it as separate. I asked for meetings, tried to talk like neighbors. But every time I reached out, they doubled down. They ignored the records, dismissed my explanations, and treated me like some rogue squatter on my own land. Their president even told me once, with that smug smile I'll never forget, "You'll either fall in line or we'll make it impossible for you to stay." That was the moment something inside me shifted, not anger, just clarity. I realized they weren't going to stop. So I stopped trying to win them over and started quietly building my case. I went down to the county recorder's office and pulled every deed and plat map tied to my land, going all the way back to my grandfather's original purchase. I had copies made, notarized, sealed, the whole thing. I talked to an old county surveyor who remembered working the area in the 70s. He gave me access to the original infrastructure, maps back when half the current subdivision was still open pasture. Those maps prove something the HOA didn't want to acknowledge. Their entire association boundary stopped at the creek. My cabin, my driveway, my fences, every inch of it was outside their jurisdiction. Meanwhile, I documented everything. Every letter, every notice, every fine. I photographed where they trespassed onto my property to post their warnings. I kept copies of the ridiculous violations, complete with their made-up codes. And when they blocked my driveway one Saturday, with a chain, I called the sheriff not to make a scene, but to get the incident logged in an official report. The deputy came out, cut the chain, and told them flat out they had no authority there. That report went into my folder too. By this point, neighbors had started going quiet around me. Some were scared of the board. Others just didn't want to get involved. My own family worried I'd get dragged into some endless court battle. But I wasn't interested in fighting in court. I wasn't going to waste energy trading blows. I was going to end this in one move. So when the board finally summoned me to a mandatory compliance hearing, I showed up. I sat in the metal chair across from them, quiet while they listed off their accusations: unauthorized building, unapproved gravel, illegal fence, unpaid dues. They thought they had me cornered. That was their mistake. I let them finish. I let their lawyer shuffle his papers, puffing himself up like he was about to nail me to the wall. And then I slid my folder across the table. Inside was the deed, notarized and sealed, showing my land predated their subdivision by decades. Next to it was the county plat map, drawing a bright line between their HOA and my creek. Then came the sheriff's report, documenting their illegal blockade. And finally, just for good measure, a certified letter I'd received from the county zoning office affirming the HOA had no jurisdiction over my parcel. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult them. I just sat back, calm, and said, "This is all the proof I need. If you contact me again, it goes straight to my attorney under a harassment claim." The room went dead silent. Their lawyer skimmed the papers, his face draining of color as he realized what was in front of him. The president tried to bluster, sputtering about community standards and fairness, but the rest of the board was already leaning back in their chairs, realizing they'd lost. The look on their faces in that moment, that mix of shock, humiliation, and dawning fear, was worth every late night I spent digging through records. They hadn't cornered me. They had walked straight into a trap I'd been building piece by piece. After that, things changed fast. The fines disappeared. The letters stopped. The board went quiet, and a few months later, I heard the president resigned after being sued by another homeowner over similar overreach. Funny how bullies scatter when the light hits them. Now, when I drive through the neighborhood, some of them wave. Others turn away. Either way, they leave me alone. The cabin is mine again, the land is quiet, and the only thing taped to my door these days is the morning sunlight. They thought they had me cornered, but they didn't realize they were poking a lion, one that wasn't roaring, but holding the deed.